How's everyone doing? This is Mr. Nolan again, looking at your 5C videos, or 5C notes on the foundations of Greek government, as well as Athens and Sparta. Okay, remember, throughout these videos, if you need me to pause, all you got to do is press pause. I'm going to keep rolling, though. Alright, so we've got a couple of different types of government that we will see develop in Greece. The first one is a monarchy. Okay, a monarchy is when you have rule by one person. Usually this person is a king. Succession is oftentimes hereditary. Okay, so this would be very much like what we talked about with ancient China and ancient Egypt when we had our dynasties. So when father dies, the son becomes king. Some rulers will even claim that they are ruling by the right of God. Okay, so the Mycenaeans have this form of government starting around the year 2000 BCE. Our second form of government is called an aristocracy. Okay, and that is ruled by the nobility or the aristocrats. Okay, rule is usually based on social rank and wealth. So it's our rich people are running the country. Okay, social status and wealth are going to support these leaders' authorities. Athens is going to have this government for a period of time. Okay, a third type of government is an oligarchy. And an oligarchy is a rule by a small group of citizens, rules based on wealth or ability, and the ruling group is usually in control of the military or is empowered by the military. Our example of an oligarchy is going to be Sparta, which at any given time would have 2 or 3 kings who ran the country and controlled the military. Okay, and then our last form of government is a democracy. Okay, democracy means rule by the citizens, and rule is based on citizenship, so they vote on things. Majority rule decides a vote. We'll talk later on this year about different types of democracy, direct or a republic. Okay, for now, we're talking about a direct democracy where every decision is voted on by everybody. And Athens is going to achieve this form of government by the year 500 BCE. Political structures, a couple of general things about Greek city-states. Greek city-states are also known as polis. All right? These city-states controlled the city and the surrounding area. They're usually relatively small in population. If you remember, we've talked about, with regards to geography, that there's not a whole lot of farmable land in Greece. It's very mountainous. So we've developed in small little pockets that govern themselves where we have farming. And if you ever see the term acropolis, an acropolis, got to remember to grab my pen. An acropolis is a fortified hilltop where the citizens would meet to discuss city government. And specifically when you see it capitalized like that, when we are saying the Acropolis, we are talking about it in Athens. And it is actually still standing today. All right. Social structure and citizenship in Greece. Citizens are free adult males. They have political rights and the responsibility of participating in government. Okay, so females, we're sorry. Slaves, we're sorry. Alrighty. They have political rights and responsibilities. There's expectations of participation. So it's not like when only 10% of the population goes to vote here in the United States. You're expected, and it is a responsibility to participate. Women and foreigners have no political rights, for the most part. Now, Spartan women are going to have a couple of more freedoms than some of our other city-states. That's a very simple reason, and for those of you who've seen 300, you would understand. Spartan women produce Spartan men, so they have some rights there. Slaves, as with any time we've ever had slaves, have no political rights. Athens government. Okay, Athenian government is going to move slowly from a monarchy to an aristocracy to a tyranny and eventually to a democracy. So over the course of about 200 years, from about the year 700 to 500 BCE, we're going to see Athens go through this process right here, where it's monarchy to aristocracy to tyranny and eventually to democracy. So what they're going to have is they're going to have a king. When the king dies without an heir, eventually the aristocrats, the nobles, are going to start running the city-state. They don't want to surrender their power. They also don't like the idea of having a new king. So that's when we move to an aristocracy. Then eventually we're going to have a series of 3 tyrants. Now when we say tyranny, we mean it's one person in total control of the government, not taking advice from anyone else. Usually when we say tyranny, we are referring to a bad thing. So something like, if you guys want to think this way, Hitler, Castro, Stalin, tyrants, okay? Tyranny in that form. Saddam Hussein. Now, our three tyrants in Athens' case actually aren't bad people. These three tyrants are going to actually reform, okay? And they are known as Draco, Solon, and Cleisthenes. Draco was the first one, okay? He seized power. He made punishments for rich and poor equally harsh. So he establishes a law code. He's kind of like Hammurabi. He wants the laws to be balanced so that if you're rich, if you're poor, it doesn't matter. If you commit a crime, it's the same punishment. So if you ever hear the term draconian, that's where it comes from. Okay, it's harsh. Solon is our next reformer. He's going to outlaw debt slavery. He allows all citizens to be part of the assembly. So he creates an assembly, allows all citizens. Debt slavery is a way of, if you fall into debt, you'd be placed into slavery to pay it off. He outlaws that. And our final one, Cleisthenes, is going to break up the power of the nobility. So he removes the power from the nobility, and he's going to empower the citizen assembly. He's going to give it the ability to make all decisions for the government. And then that is when Athens finally moves into our democracy. This is an important process that you guys have to understand. Athens becomes our first democracy in history. Okay? The democracy that we have here in the United States, we trace its roots back to 500 BCE, okay, to Athens. Now, it's limited democracy in that not everyone has the right. Only adult male property owners can be citizens, voter, etc. So, essentially, if you want to think about it, people who own land, okay? So you're still kind of talking about only the rich, but it's not just the super duper rich, alrighty? Citizens would get together in assemblies to make decisions. Slaves, women, and foreigners have no political rights. So our citizens usually would have had to serve in the military. They meet and they come up with these decisions by voting. Daily life in Athens. Boys would receive an education in reading, grammar, poetry, history, math, and music. Very similar to an education that you guys would see. They learn logic and public speaking for use in assemblies later on in life. So they learn how to come up with a logical argument, how to speak publicly for that day when they move in to an assembly, or they become part of the government and they have to voice their opinion in democracy. Now, girls in Athens' daily life did not attend school. They stayed at home. They learned child rearing and household stuff, so cooking, cleaning, and how to raise children. This should sound very familiar to you because a lot of European life and eventually early American life is tracing its roots back to what we consider to be the height of classical civilization, which is Athens. All right? There's an emphasis on the arts, intellectual pursuits, and citizenship for male adults in Athens. Okay? So producing artwork, intellectual pursuits, coming up with new ideas, and then being a participant in the government. Now, Sparta, on the other hand, Sparta has been glorified recently in the movie 300. Spartan government is militaristic and an aggressive society. They're eventually going to become rivals with democratic Athens. They have an oligarchy ruled by a few. You would call those few kings, but essentially it's just one or two guys. All right, Sparta has assemblies for all citizens, but the two kings and a select group of officials would make all the decisions. So they would allow the citizens to assemble and voice an opinion, but ultimately the kings and his close advisors would make the decisions. And so it's an oligarchy. It's a rule by a select few. Spartan daily life. Boys are taken out of their homes at the age of 7 and begin intense military training. Many of them will die and not make it to adulthood. That is part of the training ritual. In fact, babies sometimes don't even make it to their second year of life. Spartan children, when they were 1 year old, were inspected, and if they were seen to have had any deformities, they would be put to death at that point in time. Okay? They're a very militaristic society. They only wanted perfect children. So at the age of 7, they take the boys out. They start this training. They teach them how to steal, how to cheat, how to fight to the death. By fighting to the death against other boys. Only the strongest will actually survive to adulthood. Girls are going to receive athletic training and they play sports. As we've said earlier, Spartan women have some more rights because they produce Spartan men. They believed that strong women produced strong men, so they wanted their women to be strong, to be athletic. Okay? As we said, women have more freedoms than other Greek city-states. Strength and discipline are valued in Spartan life over literature and artistic expression. Okay? You're not going to have a whole lot of art and literature coming out of Sparta. They spent all day, every day focusing on military training and discipline. So if you want to pause and just review these here real quickly, just to keep in mind the different types of government. And then this is just a little compare and contrast here between Athens and Sparta if you want to pause the video and take a second to look at it. Otherwise, that's going to be all, guys.
Generals gathered in their masses, just like witches at black masses. Evil minds that plot destruction, sorcerer of death's construction. In the fields of bar